Hello and welcome to the 83rd episode of the Machine Ethics Podcast. This episode we're talking with Adam Braus. It was recorded on the 25th of October 2023. We chat about natural stupidity and natural intelligence, misericordianism and avoidable misery, the idea of a misery detector, human instincts. We chat about Asimov's rules. We also muse about the positive outcomes of AI technologies. If you'd like to find more episodes, you can go to machine-ethics.net. You can contact us at hello@machine-ethics.net. You can follow us on Twitter, machine_ethics, Instagram, Machine Ethics Podcast, or YouTube, youtube.com/@machine-ethics. And if you can support us at patreon.com/machine ethics. Thanks again and hope you enjoy. Hi Adam, welcome to the podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. If you could just introduce yourself, who you are and what you do.
Hey there, Ben. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, my name's Adam Braus, and my day job is a professor of computer science. I'm the chair of computer science at Dominican University. It's an applied program, so it's very much like training web developers. So that's kind of what I do day in and day out. But then, I'm also my actual training is in ethics, and I'm doing some work on that right now. So it was so exciting when you contacted me, and I was able to listen to your great podcast.
Thank you very much. You're too gracious. I believe you sent me a message about a year ago, and I just put it in the kind of maybe I'll get back to that pile in my inbox, and then I suddenly realized I kind of went back to some of the stuff and went, oh yeah, that would be good, and it would be good now because we've had quite a few kind of sort of more practical or things which are more zeitgeisty episodes, so it's nice. So thank you as a bit of a cleanser to come back to like kind of pure academic sort of stuff, and that's kind of how I feel about so you sent me your book as well, and hopefully we'll have a review up at that once I finished it. I've got about probably 3/4 of the way through it now, and yeah, it's great. So
not too dense. The Future of Good, not a very dense. It's pretty readable, right? It's like stories mostly, and yeah. It's meant to be kind of like a approachable, fun thing to read.
Yeah, it's very, let's say it's an easy read.
Yeah, I think I did it kind of backwards from most academics. I think I do most things I do backwards. So like I don't have a PhD, but I actually am the chair of a department. People are like, how did that happen? And then I wrote a nonfiction sort of fun book to read, like for popular nonfiction, and now I'm writing academic papers about that. So I'm actually having to kind of tighten up the thinking and do all the citations and everything, whereas most academics, they write the really, really academic-y thing, and then they write a stilted, sort of hard-to-read nonfiction book about it, So I go backwards. Yeah, it's good. It's good to go backwards sometimes.
Well, I still enjoying it, and I will ask you further about that in a second, because I have quite a few things I have to say about it. Sure. First, on the podcast, the thing we always ask is, Adam, what is AI?
I listened to so many episodes and I got to hear this question over and over again. And I decided I would be like a politician and I would answer the question I wished you asked me instead of the one you do. And I think what I'd like to say is I'd like to define NS. Do you know NS? You probably don't because I just made it up for this podcast. But it's natural stupidity. We don't talk about. People are talking a lot about AI. But they're not talking about NS, and I think it's important for us, I'll just throw that out there that if AI is a kind of intelligence, if it's a kind of light, if it's like light, what is the darkness that it's inside of, that it's kind of illuminating and kind of dispelling? And I think that's NS, natural stupidity. And there's some ethical concerns, I think. I mean, you might even argue, what's going to put the nukes in the air? Is it going to be AI that's run amok, or is it going to be the kind of ever-present devil at our elbow here, which is natural stupidity?
is that the kind of like human stupidity, or
Yeah, exactly. Humans. I mean, humans have been able to achieve a lot, largely through the division of labor and allegiance to certain good ideals from the Enlightenment and science and stuff. But when you look around at the problems in society and the risks, existential risks, right, X risk or whatever, it's mostly due to like really, really stupid choices and things that are persistent. And we like to act like like things are complicated, or like problems in the world are super complicated, and to some extent they are. But other times, I think even most times, the problems in the world are actually just like really stupid. It's clear. Like healthcare in the United States of America, a for-profit healthcare system that we spend 17% of our GDP doing healthcare, when anyone with a brain knows that you could just create a public option or a universal payer, or adopt something more like a kind of Dutch system where there's universal coverage by private insurers, whatever. There's a million ways to do it. But if you had universal coverage, the prices would drop by half. You'd only be spending about 8% of your GDP on it. You'd save trillions of dollars over decades. And it's obvious. It's not, and it's, some people say it's greed, but I think it's more than greed. It's like a kind of stupidity that allows us to keep doing this like tremendously stupid thing. And so when you start to talk about AI, I mean, people get kind of nervous because it's new. But if the premise is that it's actual intelligence, it is intelligence, then boy, do I have some stupidity for it to come and help with. There's so much stupidity everywhere.
yeah.
So I'm very pro AI. I'm very AI-philic.
Yeah. I feel like you almost want the AI to go, guys, why haven't you got the healthcare sorted out?
Yeah. I can sort that out for you in about 10 minutes, because anybody can. It's really an easy question.
Yeah. That's just something you should have done by now. Come on, get on it. That would be nice. I think a system which tells you it's kind of like a simulation, isn't it? Like this is probably a better way of running things, guys. And they're probably all things we know.
Yeah, I actually have I actually wonder if there isn't some interest by billionaires. Like Elon Musk says, we should be really careful with AI and regulate it and be slow with it and sort of develop it in this really, really careful way. I wonder if that isn't just him trying to not lose his job, right? I mean, I think an AI can do the job of like a, billionaire flyboy a lot better than any of our billionaire flyboys, And so there's a kind of risk not to there's a risk to truck drivers and, technological unemployment for the masses of people. But there's really a risk for CEOs, stockbrokers, hedge fund managers, private equity people. Those are the people who I think AI can do their job way better. So much better, so instantly. Even early versions of AI will be able to be better than they are at their jobs.
Yeah, but you still need someone to go to the golf course and stuff, though, right?
Oh yeah. Well, we can send a robot. We can send a golf robot. There was just this expose on John Oliver about McKinsey, right? Who supposedly is this intelligent, right? We're talking about intelligence and stupidity here. So supposedly McKinsey is oh my God, McKinsey's so intelligent. Oh, it's all blah, 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 blah. They're so smart. They're so whatever. And then it turns out that pretty much all they do is they just get hired. They come in, they say you should fire, a third of your people. They just do the same thing. They just do the same playbook for every company. Fire everybody, outsource everybody. And then the executives say, "Oh, well, sorry, McKinsey said we have to fire you. It's not that we want to fire you."
Yeah,
and that's really the only reason they hire McKinsey is so that they have someone to pin all the layoffs on. And then the McKinsey walks out and does it again the next day somewhere else. It's they're not actually doing anything that intelligent, right? If there actually was an AI, right, that was actually intelligent, that would be amazing for the economy, because all these numbskulls would be out of a job, and we would actually or maybe they would use the AI, but they wouldn't just come in and say, fire everybody, which is just stupid. They'd come in and say, well, what's your innovation strategy, and how are we going to transition, and how are we going to do these things, instead of, So let's bring in some intelligence. Let's have some actual intelligence in our society. Now, my job is actually what is in the realm of NI, natural intelligence. Natural intelligence is quite, I think, is more in some ways. I mean, AI is interesting because it's novel, but natural intelligence, I think, is an actually more immediate opportunity. At least has been for the past couple thousand years, and that's training human beings to be more intelligent. And I still think that's an underappreciated opportunity, right?
I guess the promise of AI, right? The kind of end game is that there is this thing which is going to always be, air quotes, like more intelligent because it, or in certain ways more intelligent for sure, because it has access to things that we do not have access to. And we might be more pliable and resilient and multi-dimensional, dexterous and things like that than machines that we have currently. But we definitely don't have more access to memory, data,
Right.
these sorts of things, which it's kind of like this is, it's not apples to apples at that point, right? It's like there's this other thing, and we just happen to be calling it AI, and it does this other thing which is better in this way. And
Right.
for me, for sure, it's like we can leverage that stuff for cool stuff. We can do really interesting things with that new set of tools and capabilities. And the cultural aspect is we're jumping straight to, okay, it's going to take over the world, it's going to take all our jobs, whatever. And I guess coming back to that natural stupidity piece is that, well, we can use it for stupid. We can carry on, making stupid decisions with this, or good decisions. It doesn't really help us with that,
Yeah. Right.
necessarily.
Yeah. And that's where natural intelligence comes in, right? Like like the opportunity is to, so like we spend how many billions of dollars developing AI, and how many more billions of dollars will we spend, trying to train these AIs, I wonder about, like, what if those billions were put towards natural intelligence? How much better of a society? I've been training people to be software engineers, and we have a very novel program, and I'm actually building a new college as well. That's kind of like an Oxford for everybody. It's a one-on-one tutoring based college called Elton College, and we can educate someone with a world-class MBA for about $20,000, and it takes about a year, and it's scalable. It's scalable globally to the whole world. I mean, we could do it infinitely because you just hire more teachers and you train more students. And so, like, if you put like as much money as you're putting into AI startup into my new college, we could train like many thousands of these amazing business people who could go around and wouldn't just say, oh, cut people at the bottom and increase executive compensation. Hi, we're McKinsey. That's all we do. That's our single play in our playbook. We open our playbook, it has one page in it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I just, and also you wouldn't have the danger. I mean, you'd have the danger of AI, but you'd have more competent humans to cope with that danger. And you might have a functioning democracy too. So one problem with natural stupidity and the lack of natural intelligence, meaning education, is the biggest cleavage between, like, demographically, the biggest cleavage between Donald Trump voters and not Donald Trump voters is a college education. That is the biggest cleavage, more than age, more than wealth, more than where they live geographically, more than anything, is just, if you're educated, you can't be tricked by the orange bad man. If you aren't educated, you can be tricked by the orange bad man. And so, to me, the real risk of, existential risk, at least of democracy, is, again, natural intelligence, the shortage of natural intelligence, not not other things.
Well, I feel like you could cut that mustard. Is that a saying? Cut the mustard. You can cut
I don't
that.
know what that means, but
I don't know what that
let's do
means
it.
either.
Let's cut the mustard.
Let's cut the mustard in different ways. But I'm avoiding going there right now because we have only a short amount of time, relatively, and I wanted to dig into your book because it's provocatively named, and it has some, let's say, provocative ideas if you're a ethicist or a philosopher in it.
Very,
so I thought for those
very.
people who are interested in that sort of stuff, we could dig into that, and then we'll dig up the AI stuff as we go.
Yeah, yeah. And I talk about it in the book too.
yeah.
There's a whole chapter on it. So yeah.
Exactly. So the book is called The Future of Good, which is an interesting title, and I think it's misrepresented by the picture on the front. I don't know how you feel about that.
Sure.
Because it's got two little robots on the front, so I feel like it's like toy robots, and I don't know if that represents what you're going for. But anyway, the key idea that you're trying to get across again and again in the book, which is represented in different ways and explored in different avenues and historically, is this idea of this word, which I'm going to totally not be able to pronounce now, which is misericordianism.
Yeah, misericordianism. Yeah,
misericordianism.
Yeah, which is just my label for a kind of type of an ethical theory. Yeah.
So I feel like if you're listening to the podcast, you're probably aware of the types of ethical theories that there are out there, and this is tightly associated, I would say, with utilitarianism or consequentialism.
Yeah, it is. It seems to be. I'm starting to think that it isn't actually, but
Okay.
it seems to be. Its sort of decision procedure is consequentialist, but its actual basis is not. It's based on human nature and evolution, by brain science. Whereas consequentialism isn't based on any of that. That's just based on the sort of self-evidentness of it being good to have better things, more happiness, more pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, logical.
Yeah. It's self-evident, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Utilitarianism is sort of self-evident. Yeah.
And if I'm going to basically have a go at what this means, and then we'll see how far we get. Okay.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah.
So in
Let's
the
see
book,
if I wrote the book right.
yeah, exactly. It's like
I didn't do the cover right, so I agree.
oh
with you.
no, I mean that's just my opinion, isn't it?
I agree with you. I agree. With you.
The idea of I bring up consequentialism because there's like often like the scales, and you're like weighing up like the good and the bad, and like if it weighs out more good, then you probably go for it than one other option. You like it's like this weighing procedure almost. Whereas what you're saying is like we can do the weighing procedure fine, but we should actually start like segmenting what we're weighing, like, and have two scales. Like that's how I imagine it. There's like two scales, and all the things which are you say avoidable misery in the book. You weigh all that stuff first, and you deal with that stuff first, and then you weigh the things that we can do to increase happiness as a
Afterwards.
it's like there's a side effect of like having done with the misery stuff first.
Yeah. It's kind of like pouring water into like a basin, and then when that basin overflows, then you can fill in the next basin.
Yeah. That's nice.
Yeah. Or something like that. Yeah. Except for it's removing. So anyways, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's a prioritizing of one over the other. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, it feels like if we just did that today, it would kind of get over the idea that you have in the book around about bringing in some of these thought experiments, right? So there's a thought experiment about the drowning girl.
Yeah.
And how you think about moral urgency when it's not in front of you, right? So there's something happening over here, but it's probably in a third world country or a developing country, and it's very difficult to feel urgency over that thing, which may definitely be happening still and exist. And maybe if we were thinking more generally about avoidable misery, we'd be I like to think that we would be dealing with global poverty and things like that, like quicker and at haste. You know what I mean? So the consequence of doing this idea is that, you know, we tidy up the basics for people all over the world, in my mind, you know.
Yeah, it certainly is, you know, and that idea, that ethical dilemma, which is called the drowning child scenario, which was invented by Peter Singer, who's also some would say a kind of misery focused ethicist, right? He's sort of he he still calls himself a utilitarian because he values the positive things like happiness and pleasure, but he weighs enormously more misery and suffering. And so he created that scenario where, you're walking along, going to a job interview, and you're wearing your best suit and nice new leather shoes, and then you happen across a park where there's a pond, and out in the pond a few feet out, there's a child struggling in the water and like clearly struggling to not drown. And the question is, do you go in and save the child? And if you ask a group of people, which I have asked my students multiple times because it's a fun activity for like an tech ethics, kickstart, they all say absolutely. Like, what the hell? Why is it even a question? Of course I'd go in. And then I remind them, it's going to ruin your, $1,000 suit and your $900, your $200 shoes. And they go, it's a child's life at stake, of course you go in, and then I say, oh, well, you might miss your job interview because you can't go to your job interview soaking wet, and it might take time, and who knows. And so you're going to miss your job interview. That could be months of income. That's another, maybe $10,000, $15,000 racked up. And they look at me like I'm just a monster. Like, it's a child's life, right? They're all so righteous at that moment. And then you start to sort of it kind of is a trick. It's sort of tight. You start tightening the noose, right? And you say, well, what about if I gave you a red button that you could press, and when you pressed it, it would take $15,000 out of your bank account, and then across the world, on the other side of the world, you could be assured, there'd be like a video, you could be assured that it would save a drowning girl across the world from drowning. And then they look at you and they're like, they start to tell that you're like, you've got them, because the reality is all of us have that button always, and it's not $15,000. It's like $150, right? So if you give $150 to UNICEF, they'll like vaccinate like 100 children against malaria, and out of those 100 children, 2 of them would have gotten malaria and 1 of them would have died. And so you can save a child's life for like only a couple $100. Mostly, I would say, if anyone listening wants to do this, go give money to UNICEF. UNICEF is a fantastic charity that helps children all over the world from all kinds of things: malaria, malnutrition, education, liberation of girls. They're fantastic, and you should give them money. But then people they start to withdraw because they're like, well, I can't save them all, and I can't. They start to have all these rationalizations. But so there's this weird thing where when you're right there, there's this immediacy, and then when you're distant from it in some way, you start to drift back, and your urgency dies way down. And Peter Singer, he has an explanation for this, which is he kind of just says like, people are bad. Like, that's bad. They're immoral to think that way. And if they were more moral, they would have what he calls an expanding circle of care, right? Where they would care impartially about other human beings. And basically for him, sainthood is to like care impartially about all human beings everywhere. And not sainthood, kind of being a craven, sort of immoral, sort of consumeristic, narrow-minded person, is someone who just cares about the very narrow circle of themselves and those people around them and things that are like right near them. I don't agree with this. I mean, I love the example, and Peter Singer is a great thinker, and I admire everything he's done. But I have a different explanation for this, which is actually that human beings have that moral panic, that moral urgency. It only occurs when the human being believes that the misery is avoidable. And that means taking less misery to eliminate than it is to tolerate. That's the definition of avoidable. So you could say it's intolerable, because if it was tolerable, they just tolerate it. But it's intolerable. It takes less misery to get rid of it. And so we're kind of trying to optimize the amount of misery around ourselves. We've evolved to do this. And so as the child gets further and further away, and the ability to affect their lives becomes more and more hazy, the avoidability actually goes down, right? Because you start to think, well, that's not really avoidable for me anymore, because the money might be wasted, or who knows, and it may not get there. I can't really perceive it being done exactly right. And so that means that no one is there isn't really many people who are more moral than others. I mean, there's probably a bit of a bell curve of the sentiment of misericordia, the sentiment of panic for the distress of others. But but most people are, probably 95% of people are inside, two standard deviations of that bell curve. We're all pretty much the same morality. We just have different appreciation of the facts and different predictions of the future, which change our perception of what's avoidable and what's not, and that changes our moral urgency to do something. So it's a different interpretation of that same dilemma that that I think is more accurate.
And I guess in the book you point out that if you think rationally about this, you're not actually thinking about what humans do. You're suggesting that a more natural position or more instinctual position might be that we are caregivers or we are altruistic by default. And actually, you have to think rationally to not to almost to given this maybe abstraction. So the further away you get for something being urgent, it kind of falls off for you. But by default, you're going to viscerally feel something, aren't you, as a human being, and react to that.
Yeah. So that it's most ethics are based on the idea of some, quote unquote higher. I hate the idea that it's higher because that's just like a made up idea. But this higher notion of reason, maybe transcendental reason or practical reason, or calculation of some, using our calculative kind of neocortex. That's like our highest. That must be where our morality comes from, or connection to the divine. Following God's law. Must be, these are the things that are the ways to be ethical in our society today. I mean, Christian ethics is hugely powerful in America today. Just like Muslim ethics is very powerful in Islamic world, and so Misericordianism takes a different perspective, which is actually it actually says that our actual morality comes from our instincts, and not just even our feelings, but not even just even our higher feelings like sophisticated, romantic love or joy for each other, for some kind of global or something. Actually, it comes from our most basic feeling, which is fear and self-preservation, which it turns out that human beings, out of all the animals, human beings uniquely have evolved to have our fear for self-preservation has really become prehensile. I'll give you an example. So if you look at like a duck with the little ducklings around, right? If you go up and grab some of the ducklings and pull them away from the mama duck, that mama duck's gonna be like, freak out, get away from my babies, right? It's gonna have moral panic. It's gonna have it's going to feel panic. It's going to have a heightened episodic memory, and it's going to have distress. Okay, that's moral urgency. It's a biological feeling. Okay, now if right in front of that duck you take like a duck stuffed animal baby and you mash it to bits right in front of him, it's just going to look at you like you're crazy. Like, what are you doing, you stupid human? It's going to have zero moral panic, zero. Right, because it's a stuffed animal. It has no connection. Okay, now take any human child. Okay, any human child. If you take any stuffed animal that has two eyes and like a mouth, so it has some kind of face, and you take the stuffed animal and you put him right in front of him, and the baby, the kid looks at the eyes of the stuffed animal, and then you just viciously punch the stuffed animal. I don't recommend doing this, but if you do that, the kid will be like, oh, they will have the same panic. They will have episodic memory, panic, and distress at you, punching that stuffed animal. This is, my mom says this. My mom's a psychiatrist. She says this is a good test for psychopathy, because a psychopath doesn't care if you punch the stuffed animal, but everyone else does, because psychopaths don't have misericordia. That's what a psychopath is a person whose brain doesn't have misericordia. Misericordia is the feeling of moral urgency at the distress of others. So this is the difference between human beings and all other animals. And Darwin talks about this. Darwin says it multiple times, that the biggest difference between human beings and other animals is not tool usage, is not reason, is not, it's not that. He said the biggest difference is human beings really care about everything. And other animals, they only care about like their family and them, and that's it.
Um, so,
Mic drop. Darwin
yeah.
quote. Boom. Name drop. The
So,
D-man.
because that's because of who I am. So, if we are like hardwired, let's say we're hardwired for this, right? Does that kind of like throw out the window the kind of maybe like our decision making in that process? Like, do we have limited agency there? And does that account for like no cultural, environmental factors? Do you think that is just the case, right? Like biologically, we're like hardwired to viscerally feel in this way, and the cultural aspect is less important. Maybe we can almost trick ourselves not to react through logic, through experience and rational. Is that kind of how you're thinking about it?
Yeah, so this is a amygdala function. So the fear response is an amygdala function. Amygdala is two little almond-shaped size brain organella right above your ears, right above and behind your ears are where the amygdala are. And in especially the right amygdala, this is where it seems like, given kind of the current state of neuroscience, this is where this sentiment, this sort of process of being concerned about other beings, their well-being, it seems to be located there. Strangely, it lights up like crazy when this happens. When you see another being in distress that you believe has a mind. So you have to believe that it has a mind. We don't do this for rocks, right? But if it's a stuffed animal with two little eyes and a mouth, then our brain is like, there's a mind in there. And then, it got punched in the face. Panic, moral urgency, right? But the amygdala is a pre-rational, it's before the eyeballs. It goes like straight from the eyeballs back to the occipital lobe to process the visual information, and then straight to the hypothalamus and the amygdala before it goes to the cerebral cortex. Okay. But after the fact, the cerebral cortex can be like, no, amygdala, you're wigging out, man. Chill. You're wigging out for the wrong reason. This is fine. And this is what happens when you show somebody a picture. This is the classic amygdala brain scan. The way they do the amygdala brain scan is they show people pictures of faces of like totally comfortable, happy faces. And then they show a face that's like crazy, oh my god, I'm in distress, and the amygdala flashes, like really blasts on the brain scan, but the cerebral cortex flashes right afterwards and is like, it's just a picture, calm down. So your reason, what that suggests is that exactly what Rousseau, this is all in Rousseau also said this. He said the way that we're good is our natural pity. Natural pity is what he called it. I call it misericordianism. And then reason actually can suppress natural pity. Reason can suppress misericordia. And that's how we get, the ability to, first of all, not be wandering around like panicking all the time for stupid reasons, right? Like we don't want to over panic. But we can also do things like, we can do like horrible things like Holocaust other human beings because we've been convinced that that's actually like a needful thing, like an unavoidable misery. Like, sorry, we just have to do this. I've constructed all these, horrible sort of ghoulish logic to support that. We can then be convinced to do it. So yeah, we have to be careful with whenever we suppress that.
And if you're taking it like that one step further, for me, that strikes me that we could have that response, right, and we do have that response to things that move and have eyes, like you said. We have this kind of, I want to say emotional, but like you said, it's this complex combination of things which happen to us when we identify something that looks like it could be a mind. And do you think that's slightly worrying for like things that are artificial and that could have some behavior, actions in the world, feedback, interactions with us on seemingly emotional level? That's an interesting kind of
like a manipulative
consequence of that instinct almost.
Oh, sure. We're manipulable that way. Yeah. Don't be a creepy insect robot that has a million eyes. Be just like a robot with a face with with two eyes and a mouth. Human beings will like you a lot better.
That's true. I guess you at that point you can make your, Donald. Let's go back to Donald Trump. Your Donald Trump bot, right?
Oh yeah, people love him.
Yeah, exactly.
Be a huge narcissist. Everyone loves that. They do.
Yeah, we could wheel him out and get him to do.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what he does. Maybe there is one.
Yeah,
oh my god,
the Donald Bot 2000,
and he just says like random stuff.
He's sputtering. He kind of sounds like an LLM, actually, like a hallucinating LLM that just sort of sputters out loosely connected things.
We need to update him.
Yeah. I don't blame Donald Trump. Everyone hates Donald Trump, but I see him as just a symptom of he's just a symptom. He's not the cause of anything. He's a symptom of our just degradation of our educational system, the degradation of our political system, that we haven't kept up with commonsensical reforms like universal health care is obvious, improvement. Or I'm really into ranked choice voting. Like we just, we know what ranked choice voting is. The fact that we don't do it is just really, I'll just say it, like it's stupid. It's just stupid. We need to do it. It's the same thing. It's literally the same thing as if you were running a restaurant and every night, like you got complaints of like 4 or 5 people getting sick. And then every day you notice that like Mike would go to the bathroom and not wash his hands. Like it's just that. It's so simple. It's just perfectly causal, And if you don't fire Mike or teach him how to wash his hands, people are going to keep getting sick. If you don't do ranked choice voting, if you don't implement universal health care, you're going to destroy democracy. You're going to devolve into demagoguery and psychosis, this kind of political psychosis. I don't know. Maybe I'm oversimplifying things, but to me it seems like we should think about things in terms of stupidity. A lot of great authors have done that. Like the Catch-22 by Heller. He's really talking about how stupid war is. Every page, he's not saying, "Oh, it's so complicated and I'm so smart, so I've sort of figured it out." He's literally saying it's very stupid. And every little thing about it is very stupid and very obviously stupid to anyone who isn't just kind of caught up in the rationalizations for it. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to channel, actually.
Well, if anyone's interested specifically in listening to another episode of me chatting, go to episode 35 where I talked to Maria Slakovic about, and she has a lot of stuff to say about different ways of voting and systems and representation. Cool. Check that out. It's really good. She knows a lot about it, much more than I could possibly ever know. I'm just going to underline that with there's so much stupidity in the world, and we should just be constantly fighting it.
Yeah, let's get some NI out there. Let's get some AI out there. Like, let's just get as much I as we can, because there's so much S. We got to get rid of the S.
So much BS.
So much BS, right? BS with no AI. Let's do it. Let's go.
Okay, so I have another one for you. So I imagined, let's go back to the AI aspect of this. And what I was thinking was one of the things that you brought up in the kind of AI segment near the end of your book was maybe it would be cool if we had like a misery detector. And that could be like I think that should AI be the first artifact.
Yeah, that should be the first AI alignment thing created.
Yeah,
is an AI that all it does is a red light turns on when someone's in misery. Misery or not. It's like hot dog or not, right? But it's just misery or not. It's a digital amygdala. Yeah, we should create a digital amygdala.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it can poke us and be like, no, seriously though, seriously, don't ignore this one.
Right.
Seriously,
this is seriously a problem. The red light's persistently on.
Yeah.
You should really check that.
No, it's like one of those.
This is important.
I had to deal with a carbon monoxide alarm which had run out of batteries earlier, and it's just like, no, I'm running out of batteries. I'm running out of batteries.
Yeah, you
Come
could die.
on. And it's really annoying.
Yeah, digital amygdala. When people are talking about how do we do AI alignment, well, the Misericordian suggestion, which I think is, I mean, I argue in the book that Misericordianism is actually superior to other ethics. I mean, I think it can, in a foot race with other ethics, it beats them. It beats everybody. I think,
I'm really pleased I don't have like comments under these episodes.
Oh yeah, people would be like, no, Kantianism, we gotta be, everyone's got their own axe to grind. But I'm happy to go, be in a very civil debate with anyone about any ethic and argue why. It's quite a powerful ethic. It explains everything. It works in every situation that I've been able to come up with. And I sit around thinking about all kinds of horrible things. But but yeah, we should have a digital amygdala. That would be the recommendation for AI alignment. Create a digital amygdala. Create an AI that has AI vision, or you could describe scenarios to it in text, or it has vision and you could show it pictures, and have it be, 99.999% detect whether someone is in misery or not. And if you had that, that'd be good, because then that would be the core, that would be the conscience, the Jiminy Cricket of AI would be that module. Put it into everything. Say by law, you have to have an amygdala in the being, in the AI, and it has to be guarded, so it could never be like self-edited out by the AI. Then you would have essentially roughly Asimov's rules, right? So Asimov's rules are they're actually an exact copy of Misericordianism, but the only difference is without the instinct for self-defense, self-preservation.
I think that's isn't that the third one, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, the first one is don't let any humans come to harm. The second one is, I can look them up, but it's basically they are Misericordianism without self.
I thought it had self-preservation in there.
It does, but it's last. It's like it's not.
Yeah.
But human beings, it's reversed. It's first, right? So human beings are like the most important avoidable misery is your own avoidable misery, because you have the most control over that because it's your life, right? So yeah, the first law: a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. So there's where the Misericordianism is. It's not just a robot can't harm a human being. It's that. Through inaction, you can't let a human come to harm. This is an important problem. This is a major problem with Western philosophy that actually one of my academic papers I will write is about this. But the harm principle really bakes people's noodles. It kind of confuses them, because there's transitive harm, I harm you, subject, verb, object, right? And then there's intransitive harm. They came to harm. Harm just happened to them. They have a harmful situation, right? There's no culpability. There's no I did this, right? And if you read John Stuart Mill's On Liberty, the section where he describes the harm principle, he doesn't differentiate between those two. He fishtails around. Sometimes he's saying they're doing actions of commission that hurt people. Sometimes he's saying, oh, this is a harmful situation. We should, He doesn't clarify, and so people fight on all different sides. They say, oh, it's all about, the government can't do taxation. This is what hardcore libertarians say. The government can't do taxation because that's an act of commission, of harm, right? But if the government's pulling away taxes from like wealthy people who have plenty of money in order to alleviate the harm of whatever it is, whether it's military defense or welfarism, which is the two things the government does, then that's perfectly acceptable according to a intransitive harm principle, right? So a transitive harm principle and intransitive harm people get people all whacked out because Mill never clarified it, and really no one since then even actually has really clarified it. So anyways, yeah, so if we had a digital amygdala, we would essentially have the Asimov laws, because the Asimov laws actually require a digital amygdala, because the robot would need to first identify if a human being was going to fall into some kind of avoidable misery or not.
But I guess at that point, I feel like I'm going to try and twist you up in knots here and see if...
Please do. Yoga class, free yoga class.
Yeah. You ready?
I'm ready.
So it strikes me that's an urgency thing again, like coming back to the immediacy of the situation. So maybe there's a robot, let's say a embodied AI, as you might say these days, a embodied AI or robot, which has these Asimov rules because it has this amygdala unit, which I'm definitely going to go and make tomorrow. After my
Please
long
do.
day, and
I
then
think it
I'm
would be
gonna
very
make-
important to have the digital amygdala.
Yeah. So there's a presumption there that we did it, and it knows when someone's going to come to harm, and maybe they drop a knife or something, it's going to land on their foot, and the robot's able to like knock it away. And it's a very kind of like instantaneous, visceral sort of harm, right, which has been avoided and is hopefully avoidable. But then you get the situation where, a bit like the taxes, where people drink alcohol, or they smoke, or they partake in gambling, or things which are deemed to be in the excess negative, or lead to negative outcomes. So there's this. So that I feel like there's still so much murkiness in my mind, anyway. I mean, for you, maybe not so much about what harm constitutes or what avoidable misery constitutes, and how those are enacted. Because you, to the extreme, let's take this robot in the extreme, we effectively get the paperclip maximizing robot again, where it's trying to prevent all misery, all avoidable misery, and
that's the plot of the movie. That's the plot of the book I, Robot, right? Is the robots take over because they're like, the humans are causing too much misery to humans, so we're going to take over the world. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
so
the book's
that's
very
kind of the
different to the film, but yeah.
Oh, well, that's the film then, yeah.
Yeah, the film's very different.
But that's the premise of the film, right? So there's a couple things. One is, we say, the word is avoidable, but I kind of chalk that word up with a few other qualities. So one is that principle of intolerance, that too much, it takes less misery to eliminate than to tolerate. That's the core definition. But it also includes consensual. So if people consensually do things in corpus mentis, consensually in corpus mentis do things, that's also that's unavoidable misery, right? So if you decide to drink yourself silly, that's unavoidable. Now, could you do could you prevent that harm at a more systemic level? You could. You could make it harder to get liquor or something.
Yeah.
And then it also includes deserved. So if people perceive a misery as deserved, then their moral urgency goes out the window.
So it's more like imitating the human kind of urgency, the moral urgency in that way.
Yeah. Well, this is the weird thing too, is that misericordianism is not a universal, purely rational, like it doesn't apply to space aliens. I have a whole chapter in the book about how Kant actually believed in space aliens. He literally believed that there were aliens on other planets.
Yeah.
And he said that the categorical imperative applied to everyone, even the aliens. But misericordianism actually doesn't apply to anyone else. It's a human species level trait. It's a Homo sapien thing. It's not some principle of the universe. It's not some universalizable thing. But it is the right thing to do for human beings. And so it is the right. So if we want human robots, humane, you could even say humane robots, then you would have them behave like a human being. They would not tolerate avoidable misery. They would feel panic and episodic memory.
You would be conscious of someone's autonomy, their rights to agency, and their
if they consented to it, then it would be well, then you can't do anything about it, and
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
So that sort of simplifies things. Yeah. We don't want the robots running around shutting down tattoo parlors.
Yeah, well, I mean, all sorts of like in when I was reading the book, I was thinking like the dentist. I really don't like the dentist. I know it's good for me, but the misery.
No, consensual and deserving miseries are
fine.
Those they're off the hook. And if you watch people, that's the way they behave. You walk by a tattoo parlor, you don't care. Even though a tattoo parlor, if there wasn't consent, would be a torture chamber. Right? That's what a tattoo parlor is when there's no consent. It becomes absolutely horrific,
Yeah.
So consent makes all the difference. I mean, sex, right? Sex is intimacy. Consensually, non-consensually is rape, one of the most horrible things in existence. So it's consent makes this huge, literal kind of black and white shift in our moral urgency that we feel.
And do you think that's the sort of way of thinking will help us on a kind of more macro level? If we'd be talking day to day, people walking around the world, but maybe constructing those systems and those ways of working, legislation, governments, that sort of thing. Is that sort of thing that can help us at that level as well?
Yeah. So this is the interesting thing. So I think this is quite interesting. So the principle of misericordianism comes from just human beings, like on a biological level. Like if you had humans in a zoo and biologists were like watching them, they'd be like, oh, just like Darwin did. It was like, oh, this is so interesting. Like, look how they behave. They're so weird. They really care about other things, other beings, not even just their family, but other beings. They even care about invisible beings like ghosts and gods and invisible minds that just they think float around in the universe, or the universe itself is a mind, and so we care. Mother Nature, human beings are these weird. So if you think about it like a zoologist, you're like, whoa, that's so weird how they behave. So then the question is, okay, why should that then be the basis of how we build like policy and laws and I mean, I don't have a good reason why, but I just answer yes. Yes. Like if you're going to make laws for human beings, those laws should be in accord with those human beings' moral sentiments.
Yeah.
And so, yes, the answer is yes. If you were going to make laws for sharks, I think you would make those laws according to the shark moral temperaments.
Yep.
They're sharks. It's to govern the sharks. Then they should use this.
Yeah.
So I think yeah. So the misericordianism where the tires really hit the road, and this is the same for utilitarianism, where the tires really hit the road is institutional level behavior. Individuals are mostly in what I call moral equilibrium, which means there is no avoidable misery in their environment. That's your and my life most of the time, right? We're just mostly, we get a little hungry. Avoidable misery. We immediately go make a sandwich, or our friends and family are right there and they're hungry. Okay, make some food. Or like you get sleepy, you go to sleep. Like there's only very little avoidable misery. It's very rare that there's a drowning child, right? So most individuals are mostly not feeling any moral urgency, and therefore they're just focusing on other things. Because that's the cool thing about misericordianism is when there's no avoidable misery, you can just make your life great. You can like bake cakes and have fun and do whatever because it's a free zone morally once there's no avoidable misery present, and people just try to make their lives good. It almost becomes a utilitarian world once there's no avoidable misery in your surroundings, right? So it's sort of in the second gear is utilitarian. In the first gear, it's misericordianism. So, but institutions like governments and huge corporations and wealthy people who have estates with all this wealth, they have so much ability to reduce misery that they actually have almost all the moral demands are on them. They're culpable for all these things because they have the agency and the ability.
Yeah. So it's more about capacity, right? They have the ability, the capacity to do something about it.
And there's a Latin phrase for this: ad impossibilia nemo tenetur. And that's from Kant, and it just means ought implies can, which means you're not obligated to do something you can't do, and you are obligated to do something you can do.
That's useful. So any high net worths anywhere listening to this right now?
Well, because high net worth people are always saying it's somebody else's fault, that they're just the victim of all these things. And it's crap. It's total crap. It's like, no, with great power comes great responsibility. Spider-Man. It's not hard. It's not hard. Again, we're not stupid here. Like we know Spider-Man, and so yeah, we have to remember that you and I, as just I don't know about you, but my net worth isn't high enough for it to matter. But like everyone has an obligation proportional to their agency. That's it. And so don't go to sleep crying on your pillow because you didn't do enough for like climate change today. It's not your responsibility. It's the responsibility of millionaires and billionaires and governments and corporations. And when they fail at those responsibilities, they're immoral, they're culpable. Individuals like us, we should do our part, but our part is teeny. It's like a grain of sand in the sea compared to the responsibility of these large organizations and wealthy people.
I would partially agree with you, but I also think that the consequence of the society that we live in is that we get people like Greta Thunberg and people like that who just who make it their thing to get in the way and to become give themselves the ability, let's say, to work at having the ability to do something. So I would disagree in light of great urgent catastrophes. And I would disagree that it's not. It's everyone's job. It's just that more people, some people have a greater ability to do something this instant, right now, and maybe they should be feeling the urgency.
I mean, individuals do have an obligation again, but proportional to their agency. So if you see a way to make an impact, if you see a way to like. If you're like, no, I'm going to build a movement, and it takes one person to start a movement, so I'm going to do that, then you do have the obligation to go do that, even if it's just you on a street corner starting out, because you see it. You see the avoidability of the misery. But if you say, it's just too big, I don't see how to do anything, just be calm, because it's not your obligation. It's only your obligation if you do see a way to fix it or to impact it. And if you're like, you know what, all I can do today is I'm going to hang out the laundry instead of using the dryer, then that's your only moral obligation. You don't have any additional obligation besides what you can do.
I'm going to caveat with that with it's good to know what you're capable of.
This is the key prayer of Misericordianism is the Serenity Prayer. You know the Serenity Prayer?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
That's okay. The Serenity Prayer is, God grant me. I mean, we're going to talk about God. Sorry, you don't have to be Christian. It's just a thing. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That is it. That is Misericordianism right there. Bam. It doesn't mean Misericordianism is Christian. It just means that, it's a universal ethic. I mean, it's the ethic of Homo sapiens. So it's going to be in all different cultures. You're going to find, artifacts of Misericordianism. And that right there is like primo Misericordianism.
So, Adam, the last question we normally ask on the podcast, like the very first question, is what, if anything, scares and excites you about this AI technologically mediated future?
Yeah, I'm mostly super excited. Like I've said, I'm very AI-philic. I'm very pro AI. I think we should go for it. Maybe I'm like in the Mark Andreessen camp. I just recently watched his little talk on Joe Rogan or something where he was talking about his book where he's very like AI is going to be all gumdrops and roses. But yeah, I actually agree with him. I think AI. I took Waymo. I took a Waymo self-driving car yesterday 2 times to and from a concert. It was fantastic. It was a great experience. Better than with a human driver. And as I got out of the car, I said, "Thank you, Waymo."
Waymo went,
it doesn't respond. I wish it was like, did a little R2D2, But so I thought it was great. I'm super excited about education for AI. Like Khan Academy, Sal Khan is like right on it as usual. That guy is so awesome. He was just like, boom, we're going to implement like a ChatGPT, teaching assistant inside of Khan Academy. So if you're stuck, you can just ask questions and it gives you great answers. Like exactly, this is like the perfect use of AI. Is absolutely perfect. I'm super excited about any kind of like like helping doctors, with knowledge. What's it called? Decision support. Getting rid of lawyers. Just getting rid of them. What do they say? What's 20,000 lawyers at the bottom of the sea? A good start. So I'm really excited to I think AI is going to be this like helper that just takes, difficult, high information, high knowledge, high cognitive load jobs and makes them like super, super more doable for the people doing them. And that is going to be great because we need way, way more of that brain power like available. We need a lot more I to fight all the S. And I think if that's AI or NI, I don't really care as long as it's I, because there's too much S. And
is there something that, is there anything that scares you about the situation, or is it?
No, nothing scares me about it. All the examples that people come up with, I find entirely harebrained. Paper clips and blah 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 blah. I just think that's totally harebrained. Mostly because people are assuming a ton of other componentry that is nowhere on the horizon to be created. Like, for example, I have not encountered anyone. I'm not totally into this space, but I'm a computer science professor in 2023. Like, talking to a lot of people, reading a lot of stuff about AI. I've never heard anyone say we're going to create a will component, like a component that would make the AI make decisions for itself or have some priorities that it sets for itself. I've never heard anyone say that. And that would like, that's a really important thing, Also, like, there's unplugging. Human beings, we can just like unplug anything, like, and even if we couldn't really unplug it, we could like shoot its electrical source with a missile. It's like, oh, they took over the missile system. Cut their electrical system with a saw. It's like the electrical systems and the systems of energy that would flow to an AI are incredibly vulnerable, really vulnerable. So I think a lot of worst case scenarios are really just total. They're trying to get clicks. They're just trying to get clout and clicks. And the reality is AI is just going to be this like fantastic benefit to especially the middle class, but also the poor. And I think it's actually gonna bring the wealth. I hope it brings the wealthy down a peg or two, because it'll kind of decentralize their power and remove gatekeepers that are preventing normal people from participating at a higher level in terms of decision making. And so I actually think it's just going to be an overwhelming success. Yeah.
Well,
maybe I'll eat my words. I hope I don't eat my words.
I feel like I'm going to be pleased if that is the case. So
yeah, one thing I am scared about is technological unemployment. That I'm scared about, because there's a world in which 20 million people are made unemployed. Or 30 million people, 40 million, maybe even 100 million people are not 100 million. There's only 150 million people employed in America. So maybe 50 million people, a third of the workforce, just like unemployed in the next 10 years, because we make all fast food workers. That's 5 million people. Even robots do fast food. All drivers, all the secretaries, drivers. That's another 10 million people. So it adds up. Maybe you get to 30 or 40 million people unemployed in 10 years. That's really dangerous. The thing is that our response to that, what I saw in COVID was the possibility where people are like, oh, send out checks and, provide insurances and prevent, suspend evictions and get rid of and essentially it would just force us to build out the welfare systems we should have built the last 30 years, So, and we did that in COVID. Like, we didn't do it great, but we did it under a Republican president, under a right-wing president. We like sent out, $6,000 in checks to people and gave a child tax credit to everybody who got, thousands of dollars per every kid. And I just thought like, oh, this is going to force us to build a welfare system we should have built anyways. So even the technological unemployment, I'm sort of scared, because it's going to be kind of scary there, kind of as we go through the pass. But I feel like we're prepared to just be like, send those people checks, like basic income or whatever. And
Adam, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. How do people get hold of you, talk to you, follow you, all that sort of thing?
LinkedIn is probably the best. I'm kind of off Twitter ever since the Musk kind of trashed it. So LinkedIn, I'm AJ Braus, Adam Braus on LinkedIn. You can go to adambraus.com, and I always put up everything I'm working on there. And you can listen to my podcast, Solutions from the Multiverse, which is a new, unheard of solution every week to the world's problems and personal problems, kind of small and big problems alike. And all those ways are great. Check me out on Amazon. I've got 4 books, fourth book coming out, so 3 books live already, and they're all very different and very interesting, I hope, and fun to read. Easy reads about nonfiction topics, well-researched nonfiction topics. They'll give you superpowers. Every book is promised to give you at least one superpower.
Sweet.
That's it.
Cool. With that, I'm going to fly home now. So.
All right.
Thank you, Adam.
Fly. Thanks, Ben. This was fun. Take care.
Hi, and welcome to the end of the podcast. Thanks again for Adam for coming on the show. Do check out his books. I'm getting to the end of The Future of Good by Adam Braus, so I'll put up a review on the Patreon, patreon.com/Machine Ethics, when it's ready. What I really like about that book, and what Adam was talking about in this episode, was this kind of reframing or invigorating of this idea of evolutionary utilitarianism, this coming together of these ideas around perhaps what is a social creature and how do those social creatures enact in the world, and then how can you square that with more kind of macro ethical philosophy, kind of meta philosophy ideas there. I think probably some of my feelings will come out in that book review of how those things kind of hung together for me as well. I also had the privilege of going on Adam and Scott's show, Solutions from the Multiverse. So do check that out. My episode is episode 68, solutionsfromthemultiverse.com. On that episode, we're concentrating on AI ethics generally, but also on the idea of machine ethics and how do you imbue a system or a AI with ethics or morality in of itself, and also tying those back to some of Adam's ideas from this episode. So do check that out. Thanks again for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.